was available under FERA. In FEMA, there is a formal section which talks about compounding. So with this prelude, we'll take a look at what are the penal and regulatory provisions, because since we all are chartered accountants, we all love to read sections. So there are about 25 sections summarized on this page. I would like you all to take a look at each of these. Have you all glanced through this? The list is very long, isn't it? But let's take this up like some of us studied our CA exams. We leave the less important ones as options. So let's look at 13, which is penalties, which is a very important section because that really sets the tone for today's session. Enforcement of powers by adjudicating authority, this is important. I'll briefly touch upon this towards the end. Power to compound, that's the core of our discussion. We won't take too much of a look and a deeper dive into stuff like appeals to special directors, appellate tribunal, etc. But I will still give you some pointers on that. We will focus more on the contravention and the power to search and seizure. That's all that we will really delve into in detail for this evening. So before we get into this, let's look at some of the key definitions in FEMA which pertain to compounding. Compounding is a term which is not defined under FEMA rules and regulations. So let's see what some of the dictionaries talk about it. So Webster's dictionary says to agree for a consideration not to prosecute an offence. Law lexicon says it's a settlement by mutual concession. The most interesting one is Black's Law Dictionary, which says to settle by a money payment. I mean, that's the one which most of the people here in this country would love to do. But nonetheless, practically none of these three really define what compounding is all about in its true sense. Because what I believe through my practical experience, compounding is a figure of penalty which the compounding authority just throws at you. It is far reasonable than what the normal penal provisions under section 13 provide for. And there are only two options at the end of the day. You either take it or you leave it. So there is no such thing like a concession. There is nothing. So I would say there's a built-in concession vis-a-vis the penal provisions of 3 times penalty. But there is nothing like a settlement. So you don't get to negotiate with the authorities. The figure comes to you after the final hearing, and sometimes it comes to you as a surprise. Contravention again is not defined, but we'll go with what the law says in general. It's a breach of regulatory requirements or statute, but for the purpose of FEMA, it's a bit more tedious. It says that it's a breach of any provision of the Act, rules, regulations, notifications, directions, or any term and condition that's specifically stated in your RBA approval while whenever they have granted you the sanction. So any breach on any of these counts would be treated to be a contravention under FEMA. Adjudication is again not defined, but the Black's Law Dictionary says that it's a legal process to resolve a dispute, the formal giving or pronouncing of a judgment or a decree in a court proceeding. Now mind you, there is no specific court proceeding here. However, the adjudicating authority here has been vested with the powers of a civil court. Now let's move on to the penal provisions under FEMA. Under FEMA section 13 deals with penal provisions, the penalties. It says that the amount involved. So firstly, it says that wherever the amount involved in the contravention is available, the penalty could run up to 3 times the amount involved, the amount of the contravention. Wherever the contravention is not quantifiable, there is a cap of up to 2 lakhs. But there is a catch here. Because one of the thumb rules of compounding is that you need to admit the quantum of the contravention. So if you can't quantify the contravention, you can't go in for compounding. There are other provisions, so you can go to the enforcement directorate, etc. However, nobody really likes the enforcement directorate and nobody takes that as a preferred option. Now this is like a bonus. So if there is, in certain cases, there could be a continuing default of 5, wherever there is a continuing default, there could be an additional penalty of up to 5,000 rupees for every day for which the contravention continues. There is a provision under section 37 for confiscation of currency, security, etc. Now before that, I would also like to go back to the Finance Act, which introduced the black money bill. To facilitate some of the provisions stated in the black money bill, section 37 capital A was introduced in FEMA as well to permit the operability of some of the provisions which were introduced under the black money bill. Now there, what has been stated is that if the authorized officer, now typically these authorized officers are officers belonging to the enforcement, if the authorized officer has reason to believe that any foreign currency, foreign exchange, foreign security or immovable property outside India has been acquired by a person in contravention of section 4. Now section 4, mind you, is a very general kind of a restriction. Like I'm sure most of you have read the regulations, and in each regulation in FEMA, regulation number 3 says that save as otherwise provided, everything is not permitted. So this is a similar kind of a provision. So section 4 prohibits acquisition of foreign security, foreign currency or immovable property outside India unless it is specifically provided elsewhere. So if there is anything which is being acquired in contravention of section 4, then the authorized officer is empowered to make an order in writing stating reasons therefore and asking or calling for the confiscation of an equivalent amount of the property located in India. Okay, so for example, if there is a 1 million breach, which 1 million worth of foreign currency outside of India, which he believes was acquired in contravention of section 4, he can confiscate 1 million worth of property located in India. What he needs to do is that he needs to, within 30 days of passage of this order, he needs to take it up to the competent authority. Now, the competent authority has to be of the cadre of a joint secretary, and the competent authority has been vested with the powers to either confirm that order or set it aside. So the law says that he can dispose of the petition in the manner in which he deems fit. Now when he says disposes of the petition, I believe that there is an underlying assumption that the aggrieved party would have filed a petition contesting the order passed by the authorized person. So that petition could lead to either the competent authority upholding what the authorized officer has already passed, or he can set it aside. But he, that is the competent authority, generally gives the orders end to end until the conclusion of the confiscation process. The FM could not have been more kinder by stating towards the end of this provision that compounding provisions will not be applicable to section 37A. So if you are caught up in section 37A, that's the end of the word for you. If you look at, let's go back to the penalty provisions. It was important to give you a prelude and understanding of 37A because some of these 3 bullets really pertain and relate to section 37A. So the Finance Act 2015 has amended section 30 to introduce subsection 1 capital A to 1 capital D, read with the new section 37A. So what section 13(1) capital A says is that wherever there is a breach or wherever there is a contravention under section 37 capital A, penalty can be levied up to 3 times. Now that is a given. 37B says that if that particular officer, that adjudicating officer, has reason to believe that you need to also be prosecuted. And when they say prosecuted, they're referring to a criminal prosecution. Then he can recommend that to the Enforcement Directorate. And the Enforcement Directorate, if convinced, can then take it forward by asking his Assistant Director to pass an order for criminal prosecution. 1C goes on to say that despite the fact that you have paid the penalty, which goes up to 3 times under 1 capital A, there can also be imprisonment and a fine. However, 1 capital C to my mind is referring to a civil process as opposed to a criminal one. And 1 capital D says that no court shall take cognizance of any order passed under 1C unless it is passed by an officer who is not below the rank of an assistant director. So what this actually means in layman's terms is that if there is a breach under 37 capital A, penalty is for sure, which is up to 3 times. In addition to that, there can also be imprisonment which can go up to 5 years and coupled with a fine. And in addition to that, if they believe they can put that guy, to be able to put that guy behind the bars, you will need to obviously take the normal procedure, to follow the normal procedure, but to get him imprisoned, even the police will need to go back to a magistrate, and that magistrate will not be taking cognizance of that complaint unless that complaint was lodged by a competent authority, which is the assistant, which is nobody below the rank of an Assistant Directorate of Enforcement. Clear? Failure to pay the penalty within 90 days can lead to civil imprisonment, or if the adjudicating authority believes that the defaulter is likely to run away or go outside his jurisdiction, he can still push for imprisonment of this person. Officer of the Department of Enforcement who is vested with the powers akin to the Income Tax Authority to recover the arrears of penalty if not paid within 90 days provision. This provision is yet to be notified. This is a new provision. It is under 14 capital A. Contravention by companies. In this case, the people who are at the helm of the affairs of the company when that contravention took place can also be held guilty. He can be held liable for punishment and he can be proceeded against, unless he proves that a contravention took place without his knowledge, or that he had taken reasonable steps, or he had followed a reasonable due diligence was undertaken at that point in time. The director, manager, secretary or other officer of the company can also be held guilty if it can be proved that the matter or the contravention took place with their involvement and connivance. So in case of companies, and it includes partnership concerns and therefore also partners of the firm, they can also be held for contravention under FEMA. Any questions?
So, in case of companies, they can designate any officer to look after FEMA compliance, right?
Absolutely.
Then that person, any person who is not director,
that person can also be. That person can also be pulled up.
But director is also director in.
See, the first thing, practically, the first thing that I've seen is that nobody goes after an employee, a general employee. The notice will be issued to all the summons, which will come from the Enforcement Directorate, will be addressed to all the directors of the company. Okay, it is up to the company. So there will be initially summons, which will actually have a show cause notice of why adjudication should not be initiated. So each of those guys will then have to prove their innocence. Okay. In certain cases, the people will say that okay, so one of the directors will say that XYZ person was appointed. Okay, and if that contravention is, I would say it's a grave contravention, then I think that person can also be pulled up by the enforcement. Because see, at that juncture, the enforcement is actually interested not in penalizing that person. He is interested in a weak link who's going to come there and spill the beans. Okay, but prosecution can definitely happen against that person. I don't know whether a penalty or penal action can be taken. The law provides for penal action, but practically I have not seen too many instances where penal actions have been taken against these guys.
Okay, so directors liability then gets mitigated, right? So directors liability. So
provided he proves to the satisfaction of the Department of Enforcement, which is a very difficult thing to get. Okay. I've never seen an order which is passed by the Department of Enforcement saying that look, everything was hunky-dory and there's nothing wrong with the company. So I've seen several inquiries being initiated. So they actually initiate inquiries which are of three nature. They issue an inquiry letter under T1, T2, T3. So each of these has a meaning, you know. So one of the inquiries is wherein they've got information from, say for example, the Financial Intelligence Unit, or from the intelligence that something wrong is happening in that particular company. The second level inquiry is where a particular authority, maybe the income tax guys or somebody else, goes and complains against that person, or maybe when an employee goes and complains. And third thing is generally when the central government initiates an inquiry against a scam or something like that. So there are three levels of inquiries which are there, and under each of those inquiries, you know, you'll see this wonderful letter coming in, which is 30-40 points. It looks like a normal routine inquiry, but thereafter, when the summons are issued, you know, each of these guys is called, and then, you know, at that point in time, you have to prove your innocence. Let's look at a compounding framework. So compounding is something which is very simple. All of us have done it in some form or the other. In income tax, we see the amnesty scheme. That's also like a compounding. Corporate law, compounding procedure is there. SEBI, compounding procedure is there. And for people who have not gone through all of this, each of us tries for compounding every time the cop catches us doing something wrong, right? So we all try to settle the dispute by paying off a penalty, which is obviously nominal, unreasonable as compared to what the normal penal provisions provide for. So section 15 is a section which deals with compounding. It permits compounding of contravention on an application made by a person committing such contravention. Foreign exchange compounding proceedings rules 2000 have been set, which give you a detailed process which lay down the powers of various people who can act as compounding officials and the manner in which the compounding process needs to take place. Okay, so that's comprised within the compounding proceedings. There's an RBI circular number 56, which actually summarizes whatever is there in the proceedings, proceedings rules. Compounding authority is empowered to compound. So there are two compounding authorities. One is the Reserve Bank of India and one is the Department of Enforcement. Reserve Bank of India, compounding can be taken under all the sections, typically section 6, 7, 8 and the current account rules, except for section 3A, which deals with Hawala transactions. So 3A has been reserved for compounding by the Department of Enforcement. So I was just talking about the limits which will determine the powers of the compounding authority. So the compounding authority is actually fixed or is actually allotted by the RBI or the ED based on these slabs. So just take a look at the screen. Just spend 2 minutes looking at it. There's nothing complicated about this thing. Application for compounding can be filed either on your own accord, which is slow motor. So while you flip your books, while you do an internal audit or a risk compliance, some due diligence, you realize you come across some sort of a contravention or a lapse, you can file the application slow motor, or you can file the application when it is pinpointed by any authority. Typically, it can so happen that you go to the Reserve Bank asking them for some sort of an approval, and that's where a contravention surfaces. So if that's the case, you can still go and file a compounding application. The only bar on filing a compounding application is where an appeal has been filed with the Special Directorate Appeals or before the Appellate Tribunal, or the matter pertains to Section 37 capital A. There are three places where you can't do a compounding at all. We've seen typically applications or approvals being granted by the FIPB also, and the FIPB says that I'm granting you an approval subject to compounding. So even the RBI does the same thing. Now one of the key aspects here is that when I say that you can file an application slow motor, you can't just directly take a compounding application and give it to the compounding cell, which is known as the Cell for Effective Implementation of FEMA. It's called CEFL. FIFA. So you can't directly go to them, because if you directly go to them, they will say no. First you go to the administrative department within the RBI, which is entrusted with the powers to grant you that approval on an ex post facto approval as the case may be. Only when they will look at it and they will give you the orders and directions for compounding, we will accept the compounding application. So typically, always remember, you can't just rush to the RBI with a compounding application. You need to first go to the administrative department. So for example, if it was something pertaining to the ECB, you would have gone to the ECB division. Go, get them, ask them for an ex post facto approval, explain the lapse to them, then they will give you an approval which is subject to compounding. Only on the basis of that order, the compounding department practically accepts a compounding application. Otherwise, they will return it.
Rahul, here we can go suo motu or when it is informed by RBI.
That's right.
So then, what is the advantage that we go suo motu and ask for compounding?
See, if you go suo motu, you can always hard compound it before the compounding authorities that say, I wanted to come clean. Okay, rather than somebody pointing out to me that there was a lapse. You always get some brownie points for that in the compounding process. See, because where it was possible to brush a contravention, just brush it under the carpet, and I'm not doing that, but I want to come clean. It also shows that there is an inclination from the applicant that he wants to pay that penalty. So there is a certain sense of bona fide or which the compounding authority will see when you are making that application. It's a softer aspect, but it really helps.
Okay, but when the chances of getting it pointed out by RBI is very low, then probably one need not to go suo motu. So when I don't say that it will be voted by RBI, then probably I will go and do.
Why do you say that?
So I am asking.
So you're saying that when something is lying low and it's possible to just whittle it down, why should you really go and blow the whistle? Tell me which book of law says don't commit a crime. All books of law will say one thing: if you are caught, you pay for it. So it's in your interest. So since you are touching upon this point, let me tell you what you lose out upon. Okay. So why there might not be a penalty to begin with? There are several provisions under various regulations, okay, wherein there is an automatic route available. Say for example, there is something which is under outbound regulations, okay. So one of the conditions is that you are not on the caution list, or there is no inquiry which has been initiated against you, okay. So when you are talking about an inquiry, so assume a situation wherein you are doing a deal. Okay, and the deal has to be completed, say, in a matter of say 1 month, 2 months, because any deal or any merger, which any strategic merger which has to be done in a time-bound manner. Okay, at that juncture, the authority says, sorry, I can't take these things on record. You need to first go get this matter compounded. You imagine 6 months is gone, the deal ain't going through. So you will be deprived of the automatic or general permission which are available under FEMA if you are caught by the authority at the wrong time. Okay? Not only that, there are certain provisions which will completely paint you in the black. So for example, if there is a enforcement department inquiry, okay, and like I said, I have never seen a letter from the Department of Enforcement. So there's a swift in terms of churning on these letters, these long asking for these this generic information, as I told you. I have never seen a letter from them saying that even after 3 years, 4 years, saying that everything was found to be in order. Now, from the RBI standpoint, an inquiry was initiated. Okay, but because of that, endlessly you will keep on going to the RBI under the approval route, where otherwise you could have done stuff under the automatic route. You could have gone to the authorized dealer, you could have sent out your evidence, but you can't do that because then you will keep on for every transaction you spend 2 months at the RBI. So this is something which you need to also keep in mind. There might not be an instant penalty, but that can really take away a lot of things back from you. The ability to kind of move your transaction swiftly from you. If you are caught by any of the authorities, if the RBI comes and pinpoints a contravention to you, because trust me, they won't allow you to execute that transaction unless you have done compounding. Compounding used to be done only at the central office of the Reserve Bank of India when this whole process started off. Over a period of time, we'll see that they initially delegated powers to the regional offices, and very gradually they have done further delegation now. So I've just tabulated here what are the powers or what are the kind of compounding applications which can be filed with the regional offices. Now, except for Kochi and Panaji regional offices, where there is a limit of 1 crore of the amount involved in the contravention, all other regional offices can accept the applications which are stated under the first column without any monetary seals. So there is a delay in reporting inward remittance received for issue of shares, so that's 91A. Delay in filing of the FCGPR, 91B. Delay in issue of shares or refund of the application money beyond a period of 180 days or mode of receipt of funds, etc. The violation of the pricing guidelines. Issuing ineligible instruments such as non-convertible debentures, partly paid debentures, shares, shares with optionality clause, share warrants until they were recently allowed. So all of these come under this category. Issue of shares without obtaining the prior approval of RBI or FIPB wherever that approval was required, and taking on record transfer of shares in the absence of a certified form FCTRS or delay in submission of FCTRS. So these are the applications which your regional offices will take a look at. Besides this, the Foreign Exchange Department has set up a unit of the central office in Delhi, in the Delhi Regional Office building. Now this particular office can also take up compounding applications pertaining to immovable properties both inside and outside of India, and contraventions related to establishment of LOPO, PO in India, or contraventions related to deposit regulations. Besides this, if there is anything else which is there, comes within the basket of the central office. Can you file applications with the central office just because you are located in Mumbai? Answer is no. They will ask you to go to the respective office where it's been delegated with those powers. Any questions? The good thing about compounding is that within a period of 180 days, you will put the entire matter will be put to rest. But 180 days from the date of receipt of an application that is completed in all respects. I've often seen applications which are filed half-heartedly. They go to the compounding cell, they lie there for a couple of weeks, and then suddenly you get a letter saying that look, we are returning this application to you because the information there is missing. See, this does not take you anywhere, because I know that people are really keen to file compounding applications, especially when that compounding application or the compounding order is going to help you in some other way. Okay, but I've seen that RBI can even return a compounding application on the 170th day. So it's in your own interest that you should be completely sure that you file this application in all respects, complete in all respects. Authority may call for additional information or record or any other documents. So while they are taking a look at the application, so let me tell you something which is not there in the book. You know, we can always read slides later. So once you file a compounding application, what typically happens is that the compounding guys take a look at it, and they will take that application, send it back to the department which is the administrative department. Say for example, if there was an application which was pertaining to a contravention under say outbound regulations, they will send it to the OID. The OID will take a look at it and they will confirm that contravention, and they will give their report which will state that whether that contravention is something which is substantial or whether that is something of a trivial nature. Okay, they will take that, they will give it back to the compounding cell, then it goes to a screening committee, and then that screening committee will decide that this application is fit for compounding, and then they will give you a personal hearing date. So typically this is what happens, it's not on the book, but that's why the application actually takes you more than 4 to 5 months until it is really taken up for your personal hearing. Opportunity of being heard. So you can take your chartered accountant, your lawyer, anybody who understands the regulations along, or you can do it yourself. There's no embargo on that. If personal hearing is opted, RBI would encourage the applicant to appear personally rather than being represented or accompanied by the legal expert or consultants. This is purely from a perspective, you go into a regulator, you need to massage his ego. You can't have a situation wherein you say that you have committed a contravention, but you don't have time to come up for that one personal hearing. You know, so they don't. So it's always an added advantage if you take the person who has committed the contravention to sit there before the compounding authority and to plead his case. So I've given you some do's and don'ts towards the end, and some of these aspects will be covered there. But it's always good to take the party concern, because sometimes there could be certain aspects which are asked in the compounding hearing which even you are not aware of, and in that case, that compounding hearing might really not serve the purpose.
Question. 180 days is for the compounding application.
Within 180 days, you need to file the compounding order. Right? So, in short, they need to fax that order across to you. So, these are some of the basics that we already spoke about, but nonetheless, since it's here, let's quickly glance through those. Amount involved must be quantifiable. No similar contravention compounded within a period of 3 years. So there is a bar. If you go for compounding under a particular provision, you will not be able to file a second compounding application under the same for the same offence for a period of 3 years. Approval of the government or any other authority has been obtained. So this is, I spoke to you about the administrative machinery. No appeal has been preferred under section 17 or 18. So this is an appeal before the Special Directorate Appeals or the Tribunal. RBI has the power to decide the category or the nature of the contravention. Now see, this is really important because the quantum of the penalty will be dependent upon some of these aspects. Until lately, the RBI never told you what is the basis on which they are determining the penalty. So there were some softer aspects which they are put into the public domain, which also we will glance through. But there was no formula which stated how to calculate the compounding penalty. Now that's where some of these aspects are very, very critical to understand that whether, so the RBI has the right to look at that whether that contravention is a technical or a minor contravention, whether it is serious in nature, prima facie involves money laundering, national and security concerns involving serious infringement of regulatory framework, in which case they will not handle this, they will give it to the right authority. Once a compounding application is filed with the concerned entity so motu admitting the contravention, the same will not be considered as technical or minor in nature, and compounding process shall be initiated. Now there was a regime, or there was a short period within which people used to file a compounding application. The screening committee is to take a look at it, and if they believed that that contravention was trivial in nature, then they would return the application back along with a fees of 5,000 rupees. That I don't think, with this provision being inserted recently, I don't see this really happening. Once a compounding application is filed by the concerned entity, suo motu, we've gone through that, and reference to the DOE. So in situations wherein they find a contravention pertaining to anti-money laundering or any other agencies, compounding application is returned in such cases, because then they'll ask you to go to the right agency. Yeah.
Any instances where amount is not quantifiable? Any examples, on the first point, it has to be quantifiable. So what are the instances where it is not quantifiable?
Setting up of a liaison office. I have set up a liaison office without the prior permission of the RBI. I have not even opened a bank account. I started operating in somebody's office. So there is no monetary value which I can attach to that. There is an extension of a liaison office. Okay. And I have not taken the extension of that. And I have not done any transactions, mind you. It's not quantified.
Suppose I go outside India, 2-3 years I am out of India, and then I become a non-resident, and then I come back to India. In the meanwhile, I did not redesignate my accounts. Now this is a very technical kind of this thing, and still I would want to seek a clarification from the administrative department that does it call for compounding or something. That one real life example was there. So in such a case, suppose I write to RBI and then to the administrative department and there is no reward. So is there a?
I'll tell you why. RBI is not your advisor. When you are writing to the RBI, you need to be really clear about what you are asking.
No, the
contradiction is if you've gone overseas, okay, you did not designate those accounts as NRO or whatever, correct?
Yes.
So you have maintained that account as a normal ordinary rupee account.
Right.
So what contravention would you have committed?
As per the contravention, the technical sense will be as per the FEMA deposit. The regulations is there that there has to be a redesignation that is to be done.
It's a procedural aspect. Okay.
No, that's where my query is.
No, so it's a procedural aspect. Okay, I didn't do it. Have I done a transaction? And I would really like to understand, if I have done a transaction, what is the transaction which would have qualified as a contravention? Tell me. Because if I had a rupee account, trust me, my authorized dealer would never have allowed me to draw that money outside of India.
Right.
He would have not given me foreign exchange.
Right.
So there is no cross-border transaction to begin with. Okay. At best, what I would have done is I would have done some investments into India. Okay. Or I would have incurred some normal expenditure, which is in every which way current expense.
Right.
What contravention could have happened? And even if I invested in shares, okay, when I go and try to sell those shares would have been classified as ordinary resident shares. So where is the contravention? I could never have been able to repatriate that amount out. So I don't see that there is a violation. It could have been a lapse. Trust me, there are millions of people who don't know this.
Exactly.
But see, it adds to their detriment. They are not able to have access to their own money.
Right.
Okay, so the person is lucky that he did not have access to it. He did not want access to that money. Okay, but I don't think that there is a contravention as such. It's a lapse for sure, but it's not a contravention.
Right.
RBI will never come back to you on such things. If you ask them that there is something which is whether it's a contravention or not, I don't think they will ever come back to you on this. Okay, factors considered by the compounding authorities when they are looking at your application. So, circumstances or facts surrounding the contraventions. So these are some of the softer aspects which they will look at. So whether there has been a gain or an unfair advantage as a result of the contravention, the loss caused to an authority or an agency or the exchequer, economic benefits from the delay or avoidance of compliance, repetitive nature of the contravention, track record or history of non-compliance of the contravenor, the contravenor's conduct in the transaction, disclosure of full facts in the application and submissions made during the personal hearing, and any other factor considered relevant and appropriate. So there's a fair amount of attention that I give to the circumstances under which the contravention took place. Okay, and therefore it is in your interest that you ensure that you bring out in the application that none of these aspects are triggered. Okay, so we've seen applications wherein people have taken ECBs for capital expenditure, not spent that money for capital expenditure. What they've done is they've invested money on the stock market. So that is something which the RBI will not like. They will not pardon you for it. So in such cases, the RBI believes that you have deprived another deserving party from doing that capital investment, because as you know, the external debt window is a limited. It comes with a ceiling. Okay, so the RBI has to pick and choose whom it has to give an approval in that. So somebody who is more deserving has not got that approval. Number two is that in the first place, you should not have access to those funds, external funds, for the purpose of investing on stock market, which you have done. So there is an unfair gain which you have derived out of this whole thing. So the RBI said that, look, whatever is the profit that you have made there, turn it in and we will close the matter. So these are the situations, or rather basis such parameters, the RBI will determine whether that is a willful contravention or it is or not. If it is a willful contravention, they are not going to be lenient. Like I said, until very recently, the RBI, the way the RBI has to work out a compounding penalty was a mystery. Now, they have given a formula or a matrix, and they put it in the public domain very recently to show as to how they will be computing the penalties going forward. So let's take a look at this. So the first row comprises of contraventions which are under FEMA 20. So broadly, these are contraventions of failure or delay in reporting, in filing certain reports. So you will see you've got 91A there, 91B there, or you've got FCGPR there, you've got FCTR is there, you've got non-submission of your ECB2 reports, you've got non-reporting or delay in reporting of acquisition or setup of subsidiaries or step-down subsidiaries overseas. That's Regulation 13 of FEMA 120. Any other reporting contraventions except those in row 2 below. So where there are such kind of contraventions, they have determined a base penalty of 10,000, and in addition to 10,000, depending upon the amount involved in the contravention, there will be a variable amount which will be determined. Let's look at row 2, which says that reporting contraventions by LOBOPO. Mind you, in LOBOPO, the contraventions they are referring to here is probably at the initial stage of, or the stage of setting up of the LO, because the LO is normally required to file an AAC, an annual statement, an annual certificate, which is already covered in the next row. So they specifically covered it there. So I believe that the reporting that they are talking about in under E is something which is more to do with the initial setup. So there they're saying that it is going to be there is going to be a maximum penalty of up to 2 lakhs. But in case of a PO, the penalty can be up to 10% of the total project cost. Now this is draconian, because when you see project offices, you could see projects in oil and gas sector. I mean, these are running into crores and crores of rupees. Okay, so if you say 10% thereof, so this is this can really be a killer. The next comes AAC. There also they said 10,000 per delayed return, which is very nominal. Delayed receipt of share certificates, again 10,000 per year. This is in the case of outbound investments. Maximum limit of 300% of the amount invested. I mean, I would really like to know whoever could kind of clock the penalty up to 300% of the amount invested. I mean that it should run into several hundreds of years, and only then it will kind of come up to 300%. But I don't know why 300% is mentioned. Allotment or refunds. So you know that if you bring in money towards FDI and you don't issue shares, you can either refund it or you can go for a specific approval and then issue shares beyond 180 days. There also they've given a basic slab of 30,000 rupees, and the first year, second, and depending upon the number of years of delay, they've given you additional or a variable amount of the penalty. The steepest penalty is in case of corporate guarantees, which is 5 lakh base penalty. And I would like you to specially read the last paragraph there on that page. It says contravention including issue of guarantees for raising loans which are invested back into India. So you leverage from outside and you funnel that money back into the country. So they said that the amount of penalty can be tripled. So that's a serious penalty. Shall we move on? In addition to the penalties which were stated earlier, there is a multiplier factor here, which says that shares which are allotted after a period of 180 days without obtaining the approval of the RBI, 1.25 times amount calculated as per the table above. So there is a 0.25 multiplier here. So also in the case of shares which are allotted, which are not allotted, an amount is refunded after 180 days with the RBI's permission. There it's a 1.5 times multiplier on the penal amount which is determined. And shares are not allotted and amount is refunded after 180 days without obtaining any permission, there's 1.75 times. Now the maximum ceiling which has been prescribed is 300% of the amount involved in the contravention. Obviously, it can't be more than the penalty provision which have been prescribed under Section 13. And in case the amount of contravention is less than 1 lakh of rupees, they will levy a token penalty. And so they say that in case of reporting contraventions, it will only be 5% simple interest calculated on the amount involved in the contravention. And in case of all other contraventions, it will be simple interest of 10% per annum. This is the nominal penalties. In cases where it is established that a contravener has made undue gains, and this is the example which I gave you, the gain may be neutralized by adding the same to the compounding amount calculated as per the table above. So this is the example which I talked about. He said that if you had any unjustified enrichment, you just turn it in. That is going to be a part of your penalty. It's an additional penalty which we will levy. And in application, and if the application is filed for a similar contravention, so if you make the contravention under the same provision and you file a compounding application after a period of 3 years, there will be 50% additional penalty there. They've also made an interesting statement there that guidance note is for broad indication, actual amount may be varied based on facts of each case. This is the asterisk. So let's look at this small case study just to see if you've understood this or not. So there was ABC company which received share application money which is 2 million Indian rupees on 17th of December 2008. The report for intimation of receipt of share application money was due within 30 days, which is January 16, 2009. Company has filed that report with the authorized dealer bank on January 3, 2016. Now, can any of you just compute the number of days delay or the period of delay here? Sorry?
7 years.
So it's 2543 days to be precise, or if we divide it by 360, it goes to 7.09 years. So we are supposed to, they've given you the, they've actually asked you to round it up or round it down to the nearest month. So it goes to 7 years. We're saying 20 lakhs is the base amount, fixed amount is 10,000 as per the matrix. Variable amount is 7 years, 50,000 rupees per year into 7 years, 3,50,000, so 3,60,000 is the penalty. Once a compounding order has been filed, to close the compounding process, you are required to pay the penalty within 15 days from the date of order by demand draft with the RBI. Now what happens if I don't pay it? So if you don't pay it, it is as good, it is deemed that the application was never made, and all other remedies available with the RBI shall be applicable. So what the RBI says is that whenever there is a case where somebody does not pay the compounding penalty, but the contravention has been brought to the fore, that information is available to any investigating agency, and they can pick that matter up and they can start a separate proceeding against you. So it is in your interest that you go ahead and you pay that penalty. I have seen some of my clients saying that if the penalty is extremely huge, then they prefer that they do not pay the compounding penalty, and they will stay back and they will say, if the enforcement or the adjudicating authority comes up, we will take that call at that point in time, because at least at that point in time you have an appellate authority, or you can go take that matter all the way up to the High Court or the Supreme Court if the case may be. Of course, if the stakes involved are really large, then maybe that could be a viable option. But otherwise, compounding is the best bet that you have.
Suppose 15 days is not feasible for payment, but I accept the compounding penalty. So I can approach RBI compounding days for further delay or further extension of this date.
You can do it, but I don't think that they'll accept it. Why? Because this is a statutory provision. Okay, so the statute says that you paid within 15 days. It's not something which the RBI has promulgated, and therefore I don't think that they can go beyond this. Once the order has been passed, you can't ask the RBI to go and withdraw that order. you can ask them to state that the compounding should be held void. You can't tell them that